Looks like football, baby.
What up, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Football Smackdown. It is Monday, April 19th here on the YouTube, Tuesday on the podcast. I'm your host, Kyle August. You can follow me on Twitter at KyleMonth8. And joining me, as always, my co-host here on the Fantasy Football Smackdown, the excellence of execution. It's Jake. Rip your heart out, Jake Rip. What up, Jake?
Now that's a very nice intro. Thank you very much, Kyle. I love it. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Glad to be back for another week. And we don't want to bury the intro here because we have a very special guest on today's podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, he already won the award for Best Decor in the building tonight. You guys should know him at the FF_educator on Twitter. The man of the rookie big board, Matt Hicks. What up, Matt?
Hey, fellas. Glad to be here. Always love jumping on this podcast. And it's the countdown, man. We are quickly approaching the NFL draft, and I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to talking some rookie prospects with Matt here tonight. And before we get too far along as well, I want to remind you guys, as always, we keep telling you, you got to check out the Dynasty Warzone Football Network by subscribing to the Dynasty Warzone on your favorite podcasting platform. Of course, check us all out on YouTube as well. Hit that subscribe button on the Dynasty Warzone YouTube feed. But Matt, you and I have talked. We've had the pleasure of at least 3 or 4 years. We were talking right before we hit live here. 3 or 4 years here at least of having you on, picking your brain. But maybe for the people that aren't as familiar with you, why don't you just give a little bit of your background and how you got into all this craziness?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, to be completely honest with you. It's taken a few years of producing, different level of content. I've been producing Dynasty content for probably about 4 or 5 years now, but for about 4 years, the first 2 years, I would say informally, I just always loved the draft, really tracked rookie production. And the last 2 years with a big emphasis on this last year, I've kind of decided to dive full in on, focusing on the value of rookies in fantasy football, watching these guys in college, studying their film, and then, trying to project out fantasy football value. So, as you can imagine, this is a fantastic time of the year for me, but, I take it even further, really focusing on these guys through the summer, well into the fall. And, I'm already ready to start watching these 2022 guys. So, that's kind of where I've tried to settle in, doing the Rookie Big Board podcast, YouTube and Twitter, and also, with the NFL Draft Bible now, which is on Fan Nation's Sports Illustrated platform. So that's been really fantastic to be a part of such a large organization there and really have the ability to be keyed in on the NFL draft side of things just as much as on the fantasy football side of things, and just marrying those two worlds together. And, of course, I got the Rookie Big Board right now going on patreon.com/theFFeducator. All the guys we're going to talk about in this episode have full profiles, on the Rookie Big Board. I believe we're at 102 profiles right now of tape evals and 169 guys ranked. So I think that's all the work. I think that's how I got to this point.
No, man, it's all good stuff. And like I said, I really enjoy your work a ton. You've really come a long way, just as a spectator, as an outsider watching you and just following along. And honestly, like this year more than ever, because I think I mentioned on the show, like work for me, it's really busy and we've been sinking a lot of time into, I've had sink a lot of time into that and I moved. So like this year more than ever, I think some people could relate, like over this last year, a lot of been working from home, but you still seem busier, right? You got a lot more going on. And I feel like as we enter the draft, I couldn't believe it was 2 weeks away, right? And every single year, I usually really lean on people like you or other people in the industry that dive into this tape, put the time in, or grinding. And I kind of just build my opinions usually from there. I don't claim to be a draft expert. I'm building my opinions based off of people that I value and their opinions on players, and kind of putting those things together to build my own board as we're entering rookie draft season. But this year more than ever, I feel like I'm cramming for the exam, man. And you, John Laub on YouTube, man, I have been burning through the NFL Draft Bible YouTube videos. You got to have, I've probably watched freaking like 15, 20 of those things in the last like week or so. So where's the best place people can find that content?
Yeah, that's Rookie Big Board on YouTube. for if you like the video of that. If you like the audio format, you could check out NFL Draft Bible podcasts, which is, on any of your podcast providers. And we're the Monday show on that network. The NFL Draft Bible Network, we actually have daily podcasts, everything from NFL Draft to Dynasty to Devy. So, you could go in either direction. And me and John, we just did our final one of the year. We hit 50. So the number was 50 this year, 50 rookie profiles. So if they're fantasy relevant, I'm pretty sure that we're going to have a video on them.
Good deal. And you mentioned it. The fact that you're making this fantasy relevant is what really drew me to your work initially, just because there's a lot of people out there that look at these prospects from an NFL perspective, which can be helpful. And I like to mix those guys into my rotation, whether it be reading articles or podcast rotation. But the fact that you and John both take a look at these guys from a dynasty perspective really helps me out. So, Jake, I'll kick it to you here because I think we know all we need to know about our boy Matt Hicks. But why don't you kick the rookie questions off, because we're just going to be picking Matt's brain. And for the listeners, we have given Matt nothing. There is no prep here. We're just literally talking some rookie prospects. It's going to be a ton of fun. So, Jake, I'll kick it to you.
I want to go right into the meat and potatoes of this draft that's coming up in, a week, 10 days. And just give me an idea of how you think these first 5 picks are going to play out, because I've seen a ton of different scenarios here, and really the biggest wild card being my Atlanta Falcons at number 4. So I'm just curious if you think it's more of like I think we all have Trevor Lawrence going number 1, but then after that, it's like, well, it's a kind of a toss up now with the New York Jets. So how do you think those first 5 picks play out?
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's smokescreen season, right? It's so hard to listen to anything that you're hearing right now. And I think I even tweeted out a joke maybe like 2 days ago. Like, everybody is interested in everybody, right? I mean, come on. Every report is going to drop. And if somebody's dropping a report right now, there's probably somebody inside a front office that wants them to drop a report, right? So, a lot of what I'm doing right now with the draft is how I felt the draft was going to go 3 months ago. And obviously, educated, guesses and guys are still moving up and down. I'm not saying that nobody has moved in 3 months, but, looking from the outside in, I think, it's pretty obvious Trevor Lawrence is going to go number 1 overall. I mean, the man already has a toaster from the fans of Jacksonville. I don't know if you guys saw that. He got married and the Jacksonville fans bought him a fancy toaster or something like that. And, I don't agree with the pick, but it does seem, everything is trending towards the Jets are going to go Zach Wilson. It would not be the selection I would make, but it's the New York Jets, so I believe that they will make it. The hype that I'm not buying is this 3rd overall pick. I think it's going to be Justin Fields to San Francisco. I do not understand how it could be Mac Jones, and maybe it is, and maybe I'm wrong. But I will not believe that I am wrong until the words Mac Jones come out of Roger Goodell's mouth following the pick for the 49ers is. So that's about that. That is the second that I will believe that Mac Jones is going to the 49ers, because Justin Fields is just so far ahead of him as an NFL draft prospect, in my opinion. So you're right. The draft starts at 4. And I think if I'm the Atlanta Falcons, probably my priority is trading back. I do think it is a spot where an NFL team could want to move up to get that 4th quarterback or 5th quarterback off the board. But I also, honestly, as a Trey Lance fan, I would love to see him go to Atlanta, sit behind a quarterback that I like a ton in Matt Ryan, and then look at the weapons he would get to inherit. Calvin Ridley, a still probably useful Julio Jones, even in a year or two. Other than the injuries, Julio, really doesn't look like he's slowing down too much. And so I would absolutely love that, for Trey Lance's purposes. So I could see Atlanta sitting there. I think probably most likely they trade back from that spot. And I don't understand how anybody has anything but offensive line to the Cincinnati Bengals with that 5th pick. I get it. Kyle Pitts, gosh, that'd be tempting. Jamar Chase, yes, that would be tempting. But my goodness, you just lost your rookie quarterback who showed Pro Bowl potential to an injury. And a unit that is underdeveloped, and you weren't able to do too much. I mean, they did add to it in free agency, but not a significant amount. So I don't know how, if the Bengals pick at 5, that they do not pick, Penei Sewell, or if they prefer Rashawn Slater. That seems to be the other potential, first offensive lineman off the board. I just think it has to be offensive line help. But, one way or another, I would say 4 quarterbacks off the board, offensive line, and then Miami there. It sounds like Miami's open to trading back if somebody's going to move up to take a quarterback. So probably 5 quarterbacks in the first 6 picks, whether that is deserved or not. It's a quarterback hungry league.
Miami making a trade? That doesn't seem right. There's no way. As a Cowboys fan with them picking at 10, get all these damn quarterbacks up here. Put a Shmuel up there so that some more talent can fall to us at 10, and hopefully we don't screw the pooch. But you mentioned Trey Lance, and I think it's funny because, again, as an onlooker to this entire process as we're getting closer and closer to the draft, I remember 1 year ago when we're talking about Joe Burrow and the fact that he only had 1 year, out there. Trey Lance has 5 games. It feels like every comment I hear about him is like, well, he never played. So, and you were somebody. I'll give you a little bit of props here. When I had you on the show 1 year ago, you told me about some guy named Justin Herbert and was like, this guy's not getting the hype he deserves. You need to be targeting this guy in your drafts. And that's why I have him on my teams, thanks to you. So I should rename all my teams. Thank you, Matt Hicks. But what's your thoughts on Lance? And then do you think he is your QB2 or 3? Where do you have him right now?
Yeah. First off, man, I have shamelessly taken my Justin Herbert victory laps, and I apologize for nothing because I just thought it was a total misevaluation of the quarterback position for a lot of folks passing up Justin Herbert last year. And, I'm ecstatic about that. So with Trey Lance, the stat that blows everybody's mind, Trey Lance has played just as many college football games as Mac Jones, an equal number. They both played in 17 college football games. Trey Lance is 17-0. He has a national championship. Now it's the FCS level, yes, but North Dakota State plays against the best FCS level competition year in and year out. And the other thing to add in about Trey Lance when it comes to, is he NFL ready? Is he prepared for the NFL? North Dakota State asks a lot of their quarterbacks. That is something we're consistently hearing from the NFL side of things, that Trey Lance is just as mentally ready, just as football IQ ready as any other quarterback in this class. North Dakota State required him to, create his own film evaluations during the week. During the games, they're not, every FBS team, every Power 5 team, they're standing there on the sidelines with the giant cards calling in the plays. That's not happening at the FCS level. North Dakota State, Trey Lance is bringing the plays to the huddle. He's calling the plays. He's calling the checkdowns at the line. He's calling out the coverage, and he's doing all of that. So Trey Lance very well may be more football IQ prepared than a lot of these other quarterbacks in this draft class. So, on top of that, you have a huge upside with his arm talent, fantastic upside with his legs, which is the key for fantasy football, right? We want that. And he's big bodied too, right? So he's 6'3", 224. In a similar way where I think Josh Allen possesses that red zone rushing upside that makes him such a huge fantasy football threat, I think Trey Lance possesses a lot of that too. Now, the key for him is going to be honing in those mechanics and creating consistency with the way he reads the field, because at times he has pinpoint accuracy and he could place the ball on a dime, but it's not consistent. So, when folks talk about him needing to develop, him needing to get more experience, he really just needs to get more consistent with his mechanics, and he needs to hone in his ability to read the defense. So those are the two big things for him. But, and he does have a bigger learning curve than other quarterbacks, but, little secret here is that no quarterback comes into the draft with great mental processing skills. All right. It's a huge jump, and they all need to be able to take that jump. So I do think Trey Lance is best served with a quote redshirt NFL season, but overall, I'm very excited about him. He is my QB3 because when you're talking fantasy football, if you're not playing for upside, you're not playing fantasy football. No quarterback prospect.
Boom.
There it
I love it. I love it.
I mean, no prospect is safe. And you could double that mantra to the fact that, at the quarterback position, we know the quarterback position stats. Why are you taking a quote safer prospect when it comes to the quarterback position? Trevor Lawrence is the closest thing we're going to get to a safe quarterback prospect. But after that, nobody's safe. Nobody is. So go for your upside and get your rushing upside when it comes to fantasy football. That's difference-making ability.
Matt, you spoke to that third pick there and how you didn't think it was going to be Mac Jones and how smoke screens are going on this time of year. And I agree with you. I do think Justin Fields is the pick there. You also just said you have Lance as your QB3. I'm assuming then you have Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance in that order. What is the what's the drop off like from Justin Fields to Trey Lance? Like, how egregious would Trey Lance be with that pick over Justin Fields if San Francisco went that direction?
Yeah, I think from an NFL perspective, I could see San Francisco going the Trey Lance route again, because I think it kind of fits the Shanahan concepts. And I think could you just imagine how fun the offense would be? And I think it would also be a really fun offense with Justin Fields too. But you look at the type of playmakers there. You have Ayuk there. You have Deebo Samuel. You still have Jalen Hurd, who I've not forgotten about. There's just a lot of creativity in that offense. And if you add Trey Lance's legs to that equation, I think that makes it really fun as well. Now, I will say, in terms of being a rushing quarterback, Trey Lance is going to get a little bit more hype than Justin Fields because he has a little bit more of that raw athleticism. But Justin Fields is really good at designed runs. He's really good at reading the field. He understands how to read options, and he sees things very well. And he is a really solid athlete too. He's really good throwing on the run. So I think both of them really fit, the creativity that we like to see and we get excited about with the Shanahan offense. So I could see him going either of those guys. And again, I could be wrong, but I have such a hard time seeing Mac Jones really fitting into that offense in the same high, in the same caliber of weight. The NFL knows this too. You're not getting anywhere with your, 10th best quarterback in the league, right? For 99% of the time, if you're winning a Super Bowl, you're winning it with an elite quarterback, not a good quarterback.
Yeah, I saw people make comparisons to how Shanahan had success with Matt Ryan in Atlanta. So maybe with that same type of quarterback and Mac Jones, you can find the same type of success. But I also saw, and I've been trying to pull up for the past 10 to 15 minutes, this quote I found from Kyle Shanahan, where he harped on the fact that having a mobile quarterback, how important that is to his scheme. Pretty much just echoing what you said right there. But all the more reason why I'm sure it would be Lance or Fields. Fields feels like the right pick, but I'm not rolling out Trey Lance with that pick.
Yeah, one of the things that I try to consistently and this absolutely translates to fantasy football too. You have to really keep, your NFL lens in the last 3 to 5 years. The game is consistently changing, right? 5 years ago, Zach Wilson probably would have been a day 2 pick at best, right? But because we've seen the ability for some of these quarterbacks to be crafty and throw on the run and have these improvised arm angles and success in the same way, because he's kind of got that gunslinger mentality that worked out for Baker Mayfield and the arm throwing creativity that worked out for Patrick Mahomes, now he's going to be the 2nd overall pick potentially. And that guy 5 years ago, I don't think, he probably would have been a day 2 pick at best. So, the NFL is consistently innovating, and what worked for, Shanahan in Atlanta that got him to the Super Bowl. What was that? Probably 4 or 5 years ago by now.
I've tried to black that out of my mind personally. I really don't know.
It's not, and Shanahan's smart. He's an innovative guy. He knows that's not going to work, right? You always got to be thinking forward when it comes to the NFL. So I get it. I understand where people are coming from, but I do think that he's going to look for, like you said, you pulled the quote there. I think he's going to look for that mobility.
As someone that, and I'll probably use this my jumping off point on a lot of these questions, but as someone that unfortunately trades away too many damn rookie picks because I'm getting too excited sometimes in super flex leagues, and no is a completely fine answer here, but is there anybody outside of the top 5 QBs that we keep hearing about, and maybe somebody at number 5 for you is different than who the consensus right now is across the industry? Is there a deeper league name? Because a couple years ago, people were feeling real good about themselves when they had Gardner Minshew out there in their starting lineups. Last year, not so much. I don't know if you guys have this, but I may or may not have 5 or 6 rosters with Jacob Eason just dying there on a taxi squad. So is there anybody that us late round pick guys should be looking at in super flex leagues at the quarterback position, Matt?
Yeah, I will say I definitely have Jacob Eason on a lot of rosters, and I thought we might have a little bit more of a shot there. I don't think they were expecting to get Carson Wentz. I don't think that was necessarily in the plan, but I still think he's a guy that can hang around on our 35-man rosters with those taxi squads. For me, so right now I'm looking here on the rookie big board, which is ranked by Superflex, because that's I like to push that Superflex style. Mac Jones is 16 overall on the rookie big board, and he's quarterback 5. And so our drop off is going to go all the way here to quarterback or to 30 overall to get to quarterback 6, who is Jamie Newman for me, which is not the guy that a lot of folks are still in on. It's a completely upside pick. I mean, Jamie Newman, he has a really interesting backstory. So he plays at Wake Forest. He has a successful true senior season with Wake Forest. Really kind of plays himself on the map. He's a dual threat guy, another kind of bigger bodied guy. He's 6'2", 235. He likes running the ball. So you could tell, clearly I'm showing my type of quarterback here that I'm into. He's good at running the ball. He's got a big arm as well. Now he can design runs very well also, but I love when my rushing quarterbacks look to throw the ball first. And I think Jamie Newman has great pocket presence. I think he has good mechanics. His mental processing, his ability to read the field, not so consistent. His accuracy at times, not so consistent, but still he has a really good true senior season for Wake Forest in 2019. He transfers to the University of Georgia, and we are all, everybody in the Devy community, everybody looking at, we're ready for a huge year from Jamie Newman. And just about 3 weeks before Georgia camp, Georgia season kicks off, Jamie Newman opts out of the season. And listen, I'm not knocking anybody for opting out because of COVID. It was a wild year. Everybody has their reasons. But from a draft perspective, it tanked him. I had him projected as a first-round pick if he had went to Georgia and just been good. He didn't even have to be great for Georgia. If he was just good in that offense, I think he would have looked great. And I think he would have really propped himself up to be like a late first-round pick. You know how there's like nobody that we want to take in the late NFL first round? I think he would have been that guy. But with an entire offseason, he kind of fell off the map. He went to the Senior Bowl and did not look good at the Senior Bowl, quite frankly. But I'm still holding out hope for him. But we're talking all the way down at pick 30. So we're mid-third round at that point, which is where you could start taking your dart throws on guys like Jamie Newman, on guys like Kellen Mond. I like Shane Buechele a lot out of SMU too, but he's going to be like a 6th round type guy. Like how Gardner Minshew went 6th round. Shane Buechele out of SMU is going to go 6th round, but he's a gunslinger. I like his accuracy. He played in college. I think without exaggerating, I think he actually had 6 seasons in college. The first 2 with Texas before Sam Ehlinger beat him out for the job. He transfers to SMU, and he looks really good for the Ponies the last couple of years. So those are some of the guys I like, but I'm not touching anybody until mid-3rd round.
All right, I got all my late thirds stacked and ready to go for some of these names. So Jake, I'll kick it to you, man.
I want to pivot to talk some of this running back class we got going on here. It looks like it doesn't nearly match up with what we were spoiled with in the 2020 class. But at this time last year, it looked like it was like a big 2 between Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. Now it's looking a little more like a big 3. Matt, if you could just give me your top 3 running backs. And then do you agree that there's kind of a major teardrop after that top 3?
Yeah, so my running back rankings are a little... I don't want to say against consensus, but
I was kind of hoping they would be against consensus. Surprise me, shock me with something.
They're a little different. They're a little different now. So for me, it is Najee Harris as running back 1, and it's pretty far and away easy. So what I've actually done here on the rookie big board within the last week and a half is I've actually gone in and I've added projection for NFL draft capital. What I think is going to be their first year opportunity, their 3-year out opportunity. So I basically tried to put them in their landing spot without knowing their landing spot and, factoring that into my rookie big board rating. So it's not just a tape eval. And Najee Harris, after I did all that, he actually came out as 3 overall on the big board, even in a super flex league. So for me, after you take Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields right now, you can take Najee Harris. And that is fully, and I am not somebody who normally, I am a quarterback first in super flex. Like I am the annoying guy in the dynasty startup that has to leave the first 5 rounds with 3 quarterbacks. That is who I am. But all that being said, Najee Harris is just absolutely fantastic. He's a monster in between the tackles. He has a great feel for the game. He's, a great feel for the field. His field vision is fantastic. He sees things really well. He's got tremendous athleticism. This man is 6'1", 230 pounds, and he has some tremendous body movements to him. But the best part, the reason Najee Harris is a game breaker for me is he is the best pass catching running back in this draft class. I do not care what anybody else says. For me, Harris is easily my best pass catching running back. And he's more than just a guy who catches balls in the flat. He's reliable. He works angle routes like every other running back in the world. At times, Alabama lined him up out wide. They put him out wide. They had him run comeback routes. He runs better curl routes than I can name a handful of wide receivers that are popular in this year's draft class. And I think Najee Harris runs a better curl route than. This man can do it all. And by the way, it's 6'1", 230 pounds. And I just told you he runs ridiculous curl routes in the SEC against some of the best defensive backs in the country. So there's no reason for me that Najee Harris isn't your far and away running back one. Now, it does fall off a decent chunk from that point. Travis Etienne is my running back too. He's 10 overall on the big board. So I'm not really advocating for taking another running back until late first round. I know positional value might push him up, but actually positional value is factored into this as well. And then my running back 3 right now, and it's very close, but I actually do have Kenny Gainwell one spot above Javonte Williams. Now, I am projecting them both to be in that pick 50 to 106 range. It does seem like Javonte Williams recently is really getting pushed into that early second round. So that pick 20 to 50 range, which is my second bucket for draft capital. So if that happens, Javonte Williams probably will get bumped up above Kenny Gainwell. But at least for now, Kenny Gainwell is 13 on the big board. Javonte Williams is 14. So they're right next to each other. But, I like Kenny Gainwell. Small sample size, but I think what he did show is tremendous athleticism, good explosion, high upside ability. I like his field vision. And I like his pass catching ability, which, again, that's going to be the difference maker in fantasy football leagues. The rookie big board is full PPR focus, so that really helps, kind of boost him up there. And then on the other side of things, I am against consensus, so who knows? A year from now, I may look absolutely, silly for having this take, but I have just never quite gotten on Javonte Williams in the same way that other folks have. I've seen his strength. I've seen the highlight clips. I get it. It seems like every time we post it from Twitter, it's that same Miami game where he ran for like 200 yards, but so did Michael Carter in that same game. That's what nobody talks about. Michael Carter, by the way, actually outrushed Javonte Williams on the season. We also don't talk about that a ton. And so I think, my biggest knock for Javonte Williams, there's two things holding him back. And so first off, there's no denying his strength, his contact balance. He does really well with broken tackles when he's working in a lot of space, but I have a lot of questions with his vision. A lot of people are really excited about his field vision. And again, I could be totally wrong. I'm against consensus on this, but I actually don't think he sees the field that well. I think he's patient, and I think he lets a really good UNC offensive line open up pretty wide gaps for him to work through. But if you don't watch if you really go and dig into the tape and watch consistently, you're going to see Javonte Williams run into the back of his offensive lineman a lot, which is like the biggest yellow flag that you could throw up for a running back. It's one thing just to get stuffed a lot, but he will run dead on into the back of his offensive lineman. And if there's one thing that you are not going to be able to improve at the next level, it's vision. If you don't have good vision, you don't have good vision, and you're done. And the other thing on top of that is Javonte Williams has capped speed and he has capped explosive ability. So, he could still get to the second level, and there's guys in the NFL that get away with that, but he's not breaking off big, long runs. He's not going to break off 60-yard runs most likely at the next level. So those are all the reasons why I'm a bit lower on Javonte Williams than a lot of folks. There's folks whose opinions I really respect that have Javonte Williams 1 or 2, and 3 seems to be the consensus, but he's going to hang around 4 for me, and maybe that draft capital pushes him up into that running back 3 range. But at least for now, I think Kenny Gainwell offers a little bit more than what Javonte Williams offers. And by the way, he came in at 5'9", 212. So he's not quite as big as we think he is. I mean, he's 12 pounds. He's 11 pounds heavier than what Kenny Gainwell came in as.
On the flip side, Kenny Gainwell came in a little bigger than everyone expected, if I understand correctly.
Exactly. Yeah. Kenny Gainwell came in exactly. He came in at 201 on his pro day. Now, Kenny Gainwell, I'll give him the credit for this. He opted out as well from this past season, and he had a year to train for his pro day. He knew that, right? I mean, I'm sure he was hoping it was the combine when he opted out, but he knew his job for a year was to train, was to come in at weight, and to perform well. And he did all of those things. Kenny Gainwell is not playing at 200 pounds in the NFL, right? He's going to go right back down. And I hope he doesn't, because I think he'll lose an edge. So Kenny Gainwell is going to play between 190 and 195 in all likelihood at the NFL level. And he's going to be completely fine. I know 200 is a magical analytical threshold, and he did hit that. He hit that, but I'm telling you, he didn't play at 200 at Memphis. He's not playing at 200 in the NFL. But that's what these guys do. They did bulk up, and he did perform well athletically in terms of testing at 200 pounds. So, Kenny Gainwell did everything he needed to do while opting out. And that, for me, shows high character. That shows high work ethic, and that shows dedication. Like, that's not easy to do, to train and keep your body up to speed for 8 months without playing competitive football when that's all you've ever done your entire life. Like, that's difficult. That takes discipline. So, I like that about Kenny Gainwell as well.
Yeah, him and I have that in common. I spent the last 8 months getting up to 201 as well, so that's pretty good. I might just have to draft him just for that. The thing is too, and I'll throw this out there for you guys listening to this, and Memphis messages this all the time, so I try to do the same thing. Like, take a look at where your rookie picks are and map out what players you think are expected to be off the board. You shouldn't really be talking at this point, I have the 103 in Superflex, right? Like, obviously you do, but you need to be looking at that pick and valuing it based off of the player you expect to get there. I know Williams was somebody that, as the third running back, I had some spots where I got the 108, 109, 110. And when I saw, when Williams' name, which we've heard nothing but positive things really about, I was like, all right, it's kind of kicking another guy into that group with the quarterbacks and the top two running backs we've been talking about forever. And, the 3 wide receivers that are all projected to go with in the first 20 picks, right? So, like, Williams was kind of a little breath of fresh air. I was like, all right, I might luck out here and still get somebody in that top tier, but maybe that teardrop is a little earlier than that. So definitely be looking at those rookie picks that you have if you have first rounders and deciding whether it's worth hanging on to that pick and making that selection, or taking advantage of the value, because we're 10 days away from the draft or whatever, and so probably 2 weeks away from rookie drafts getting started, and those picks are just going to continue to rise in value, so you can get out while they're getting especially good if you hung on to them this long. I wanted to throw something at you, Matt, because I've heard you mention it a couple of times on podcasts, and I think you've mentioned it you've alluded to it a few times here. So we'll take one step back from players for just a moment. I want to get your thoughts on draft capital, because again, we're less than 2 weeks away. All these names are going to get started to be placed with teams. And I know for the common man like me, right, a guy gets drafted in the first round, I'm just like, all right, whoop, here he goes to the top, because I don't have as much context. Right. So with you not only invested in these guys within the last 12 months, evaluating them from a NFL draft perspective, you're a Devy guy. These guys, their stories. So how much stock are you putting into draft capital as somebody that, again, dedicates a lot of time and effort and puts your talents into this draft? How do you factor that into your evaluation for dynasty purposes?
Yeah, so draft capital is important. I think that's the first the first place to start, I should say. It's important because it's going to provide opportunity, and it's going to, give you second chances, third chances, whether that's on your first team or your second team. Draft capital hangs with you. It really does. If you're a first round pick, you're always going to be a first round pick. I mean, why the heck did the Falcons give Laquan Treadwell another shot this past season? You know what I mean? Because he was a first round pick, and he has proven to be nothing but not good. Kelvin Benjamin, how many shots did Kelvin Benjamin get? He was a first round pick. Brashard Perriman is a Detroit Lion, and he is a first round. So it's going to help you, right? It's going to help you in the long term. And I gave the worst examples of that, but it helps you, and it gives you a better chance of getting opportunity quickly for your NFL roster. Now, it's not the end all be all. And there's a couple examples of guys that I think could go day one that I don't want in fantasy football. And that it was that way last year as well. One of the myths that I've been trying to dispel, or maybe just I've maybe flipped that narrative. One of the pieces of draft insight that I've been trying to push out there. And this is actually, so all the guys here, I have all of my guys in my rankings, and they're in a bucket based on draft capital. And I have day one early, which is picks 1 through 10, day one mid, which is picks 10 through 20. And then my next bracket is day one late to day two mid, about picks 20 to 50. And for me, that's a real breaking point, because in most NFL drafts, the general consensus is that there's not 32 first round players, right? There's about 18 to 22, 23 guys, depending on any year, where, NFL scouts, NFL evaluators across the board, those are the guys who, you're able to say, these are first round talents. And after that, you're drafting for your team's preference, the guys that fit your team, who you want. And so you have to keep that in mind. So a really good example of this is in last year's draft class, Jalen Reagor was somebody who shot up fantasy boards when he got taken in the first round. He was picked, 22? He was a pick before Justin Jefferson. I want to say 22, but I could be wrong. And so a lot of folks were really excited. First round pick, Jalen Reagor, first round pick. The Eagles must love him. They're going to feed him the ball. Well, on the NFL draft side of things, and we'll never know this for sure, but on the NFL draft side of things, a lot of talk was that the Eagles bid against themselves and that they could have taken Jalen Reagor with that same pick in the second round, which I believe was 50-something. So, it's the point being that after you get past those first, 20 or so picks, that it's really about team preference. And most teams are valuing those as second round picks at that point in time. It's one of the reasons that Bill Belichick has always traded back from those picks, because if he doesn't see a guy that he loves, usually the Patriots are drafting around 28, 29, he knows he could get somebody that he has a similar evaluation on at pick 45 or 50. So, that's why for me, that day one, late day two, mid bucket is where a lot of guys fall. It's that 20 to 50 range. And those guys are all, in the same line draft capital wise. So if you project that from last year, Jalen Reagor would have had the same draft capital as a guy like Michael Pittman or T. Higgins, because those guys went at the top of the second round. And to discount them because they went 6 picks later just because you had to wait overnight for them to go, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Those are still guys that are going to be priorities on their NFL teams. And then we go into day 2 late, which is 50 to 106. And then we go into day 3, which, kind of really opens things up at that point in time. So, draft capital is important for me, but I try not to overemphasize that day one is an end all be all type spot. I break down what I really consider to be day one into that day 1 early, day 2 mid, or day 1 mid. And then it's a pretty wide range after that.
Yeah, you mentioned, and Jake, I'll kick it to you here, and you can take us back to the running backs or off to wide receivers. But and it's hilarious that you mentioned the Pittman and Higgins thing, because that was something that it wasn't like in the moment I was thinking like, man, people are idiots. Like I was like, yeah, Reagor's at 8, or whatever, or clearly in the the first round of your rookie draft. And luckily for me, I lucked out. I just had some early seconds. I ended up with a lot of Pittman and some Higgins in some spots. And then looking back on it, just like you said, like, why were we so much higher on Reagor? Just because he was in the first round. It wasn't that much of a difference. But I think that's a great point, is that there's definitely not all first round picks are equal in the NFL draft. There's a drop off point, and we need to be looking at that just like these NFL teams are when they're evaluating these picks. So I think it's a great point. I appreciate you breaking that down for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could translate it right over into this year's wide receiver class. It seems like the best point of value in rookie drafts is the top of the second round, because there's going to be wide receivers that I think are very good that hang around until the second round, because rightfully so, especially in superflex leagues, we push quarterbacks up the board. It makes sense, positional value. And I think what we do as well, which isn't as smart, is we always push our running backs up the board. You may have gotten T. Higgins in the second round last year because somebody took Keyshawn Vaughn at 110. And I liked Keyshawn Vaughn, but I liked him at 210. But we wanted running back, so we pushed him up to 110. So I think we might do a similar thing this year. And I'm seeing consistently in my mock drafts, with industry guys, Devontae Smith in the second round, Elijah Moore in the second round. I really like Terrace Marshall, second round, Tylan Wallace, top of the second round. So I think we're going to be right back there, with some really good wide receivers. So I tweeted out, I think like once every month, it's a good day to buy second round rookie picks, because those picks always smash value. And if you're going into this year's draft and all you have is 3 second round picks, you know what? That's not a terrible spot to be.
Matt, before we do a full transition here into wide receivers, I've got one more running back that I got to get your opinion on. Last season, yeah, I just started dipping my toes into the Devy game, and I remember like in the rookie draft, it went something like Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and then it was a toss up at that point where people started talking about, all right, maybe we should take Chuba Hubbard. Now, the stats he was putting up that season, I just had him here in front of me, 2,000 yards rushing, 21 touchdowns. And then heading into this season now, it seems like everyone just wants to bury him on their running back rankings. Not even top 10. People are saying he's trash. I want to know what happened to this guy who it seems like not too long ago was in the top 3 discussion.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard is a really interesting story. And for me, so right now, Chuba is 27 on my big board, which puts him at running back. Let's make sure I get this right. 6, 7, 8, 9, running back 9. And he actually hasn't necessarily moved down for me. He just hasn't moved up. He's kind of been here. And I had a lot of question marks despite the production from Chuba Hubbard. And it really starts, we talked about questionable vision earlier and how much of a red flag that is for me. I thought Hubbard's vision was really questionable at Oklahoma State. Now, if you're not, the biggest college football watcher, Big 12 is not known for their defense. And Hubbard was running with some really wide open holes. And Oklahoma State does have a really good offensive line, relative to the Big 12. It's kind of underrated. And so they were doing a really good job opening up wide gaps. And now, don't get me wrong, Hubbard is fast. But he is quite literally a track star playing football. He very much could have chosen that professional track path, but, he went with football. And Hubbard wants to run in a straight line, and he wants to run fast. And it's really frustrating because his place, first off, he doesn't have good vision in between the tackles. He consistently misses his holes. And if his designed hole is not open, he is not going to run for the play, right? The offense needs to create the space for him. He is not going to create that space himself, which I do not like for my running backs. And what's really frustrating is Hubbard is fast enough and he's quick enough where on a lot of the plays where he gets stopped, if he had just bounced to the outside, bounce off tackle, he would have had the space that he needed to break off a big play, but he wants to run at the A gap and at the B gap. And when you are 6'0", 207 and you are known for being a track star, the A gap and the B gap is not where you want to live, right? You need to be able to get outside. You need to be able to get in space. And so if you can't consistently work in space in one of the worst defensive conferences in college football, then I just don't trust that you're going to do it at the next level. So for me, he's a day 3 pick. He's probably going to be an early day 3 pick. In his traits and his upside in a weak running back class, it's worth a flyer if you're in the 3rd round. But I'm not taking him earlier than probably the mid-3rd round of your rookie drafts. And at that point, everybody you're stepping up to the plate for, you're taking a swing at, right? So, I'm fine with it at that point. But, there's definitely a lot of running backs that I would rather take over Hubbard.
Right on, Kyle. You want to kick it to wide receivers?
Yeah, I love it because especially with it even more so than usual in 2020. We didn't, even as the casual college football fan, I couldn't have even told you what teams were even playing which weeks. Like it was impossible for me to follow. And even more props to guys like Matt here that were able to keep up and know the backstories on these guys and where they're at or what their plans were. And man, it was really, really tough to follow. So sometimes we kind of lean back to the names that we knew. And if we've learned anything over the last few years, and Hubbard's one of those guys is like, hey, this, time changes things. And his name that was at the top of the board just, maybe 12 months ago, not the case anymore. So at the receiver position, I think we're kind of more familiar with some of the big names. We obviously know who's going to go in the 1st round. So Matt, of the NFL draft. So Matt, I want a name or two from you that's just like maybe that the people should be paying more attention to, right? Some of our listeners here have been listening to other podcasts, dive into this deep. I know Memphis has been killing it with some of his rookie prospecting on this feed as well. So who are a couple names where you're like, hey man, if I have to pin a few guys that I want to get on my teams, that could probably get in the mid rounds. Who are those wide receivers for you?
If I could have Terrace Marshall on 100% of my rosters, I will have Terrace Marshall on 100% of my rosters. And he's another one of these guys. He's hanging around until the 2nd round. And I think it's just going to be a huge mistake. I love Terrace Marshall. He's my wide receiver 3 in this year's draft class. He has been for a while. I still think he's going day 1. It's not a popular opinion, but I think he fits in Tennessee. I know he fits in Green Bay, but Green Bay is going to Green Bay. So who knows if he'll land there. Whisper it. He fits in Baltimore. It'll be good for me as a guy living in Baltimore, but it sure won't be good for fantasy football. So I'll have to move him down if he goes to Baltimore. But, in this year's draft class, we talk about a lot of the really talented guys at the top. Jamar Chase, he's 6'1". Jalen Waddle, 5'10". Devonta Smith, 6'1". Elijah Moore, 5'8". Rashad Bateman, 6'1", Rondale Moore, 5'7". Terrace Marshall is 6'3", 200 pounds. And I think he's going to stand out for that reason. And it's a big part of the reason I think he's going to go round one. Now, past that, how this translates to fantasy football is the way that Terrace Marshall wins. He wins in the deep third of the field. He has great downfield acceleration. He separates downfield very well. He's got good hands. He's a good contested catch guy. He tracks the ball well if it comes to that. But more often than not at LSU, he is separating before that catch point, and he's got space, and that is leading to big plays. He had 7 touchdowns through the first 4 games of the college football season this past year. He ended up opting out. The only reason you don't know his big numbers, the year before at LSU, he was playing in an offense with both Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and Terrace Marshall was actually on pace to still outproduce Justin Jefferson that season, except he had a late season injury. So it's not even the fact that he was getting, crowded out by a talented group on that national championship team. He just didn't play the full season because he got injured. And so Marshall is somebody, by the way, I believe he was a 5-star coming out. So he has a pedigree behind him. He's a big man. He's consistently won. And he has that pedigree, and he's played and gotten developed at LSU, which is wide receiver university, at least for now, until these Ohio State and Alabama guys keep taking over the league. So I love Terrace Marshall. I love everything about him. I think he's so underrated, and I'm taking him as my wide receiver 3 every single time. That's definitely a guy right off the bat. More popular name, that's not digging deep yet, but I think he's going to be a huge value in a lot of leagues.
Hey man, and even having him at 3, I mean, that's a name that we've seen in the first round, and on the mock drafts to get all this pub and everything. But I don't know that I haven't seen too many dynasty rookie drafts that are putting in that high. With over those, it always seems like there's a tier break, with that. So again, if you're sitting there at the early second, that's probably a name that might be there for you in these super flex drafts. And that sounds like it's going to be a great value. So I really dig the insight on there, and some things again that you're not going to find just by looking at the stat sheet. Jake, you got something else for Matt here?
You bet I do. So it seems like everyone has Jamar Chase as their number 1 wide receiver. That's where I'm at. And then most people defer to then the Heisman Trophy winner, Devontae Smith. I'm curious what the gap is like for you between a guy like Devontae Smith and his teammate Jalen Waddle, because what Waddle was doing while he was healthy was really just as unprecedented as what Smith was doing. I'm looking at his game log now from weeks 1 through 5. 134 yards, 142 yards, 120 yards, 160 yards, all before he was injured. So is he any more risky really than Devontae Smith going into this? I know Devontae Smith's got the hardware, but Waddle definitely has the stats to back it up.
Waddle's my wide receiver too. I am all in on Jalen Waddle. I'm a huge fan of his. And actually before the injury, I was really adamant and on the record that I thought he was going to be wide receiver 1 off the board because he is fast, and the NFL loves fast. But, a lot of people, fast wide receiver from Alabama. Oh, that sounds like Henry Ruggs. Yeah. And we kind of get scared. Jalen Waddle is a much, much more complete receiver than Henry Ruggs ever was. And I like Henry Ruggs, by the way. I've not given up on him. But Jalen Waddle has always been a more well-rounded and complete prospect. So I love his hands. He has tremendous handwork, really consistent, sticky hands, and I don't throw that around easily. I'm quick to knock wide receivers on their hands. He separates very well with his speed. He has sharp, quick footwork. It helps. He wasn't asked to run the most complicated routes at Alabama, but he ran them very well. He's got a great yards after catch potential, which doesn't always translate best to fantasy football, but he does really well. So I kind of use it as like a bonus factor for me. But on top of that, he's 5'10", 182. You would think this man playing against SEC defensive backs as close to Sunday as you get playing on Saturdays, you would think that he was 6'1", 200 pounds. The way that he goes up and wins contested balls, ridiculous vertical ability, tremendous athlete, and he's got a long catch radius. So, he's not just a speed guy. He'll go up and win the contested catch ball as well. I would love Jalen Waddle. Kind of the spot that I'm really hoping he goes to, and maybe this is full circle to the Justin Herbert pick last year. But my goodness, if you allow him to play inside on that Los Angeles Chargers offense with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, if you bump Keenan Allen there to the outside more consistently, I mean, Waddle could shred over the middle of the field. But you could also bump him to the outside if you need him to, not consistently, right? He's not going to be a boundary guy at the NFL level, but he can kind of play in that, flanker role if you need to slide that to the outside. So I absolutely love Jalen Waddle. He's my wide receiver too. And you're right. I don't mean this as a slight to Devonta Smith in any way, but if Jalen Waddle doesn't get injured, Devonta Smith doesn't win the Heisman. It just does not work out that way. And Devonta Smith is a tremendous wide receiver, but that's just being realistic about it. So, by the way, the other thing that helps Jalen Waddle, and I know it's not the most sexiest thing for fantasy football purposes, but Jalen Waddle is a really good kick returner as well. If you go back to 2019, Alabama-Auburn for college football fans is a huge rivalry. And Alabama was actually getting, not shut out by Auburn, but they were, Auburn had all the momentum in the game until Jalen Waddle returns a kickoff for a touchdown. It was a ridiculous return. Look it up on YouTube. It's a tremendous return. And he shifts the entire momentum of the game. Alabama goes on and ends up winning that rivalry game. So, I like to say that Jalen Waddle is quite literally a game-changing talent. And I don't think he gets out of the top 15 picks of the NFL draft. There's just not a chance.
You got to factor in as well Waddle over Smith by purely just the fantasy football team name aspect there as well. I mean, what does Smith do for you? I mean, come on now. So let's go.
Waddle baby Waddle. Yeah, we could go with a lot of
Look at this. See, that's already like I've already got all these teams. I mean, I'm Debbie guy here. I've been killing it for years. What's you mentioned a couple names that you have towards the top of your board. Who are some names that people maybe should be weary of? Because I think there's always these names that whether they're early draft picks that all of a sudden people are like, oh, now they're moving into the rookie, the first round of rookie picks based off of draft capital only, or maybe some names that have been tossed around other rookie drafts or mock drafts has been sitting over the last few months. Who are maybe a name or two that people should be weary of that maybe you're just not as high, you're not seeing it like other people are.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most unpopular opinion you could put on Twitter right now, but I've been making it for about 8 months, so I'm just going to keep making it. I don't see it with Rashad Bateman in the way that everybody else sees it with Rashad Bateman. He's my wide receiver 6. So I don't think he sucks. I don't think he's bad, but for some folks, he's wide receiver 1. For a lot of folks, he's in the top 3. And, when I put Rashad Bateman in, and I like watching him play, right? And so, I have a process that I go through to give these players tape evaluations. And when you watch him play, especially the 2019 tape, the 2020 tape, it seems like folks just literally ignore that tape when evaluating Rashad Bateman because it's not good. But if you go back and watch the 2019 tape, there are some freaking fun plays, right? Like he is a fun, energetic, exciting player to watch. But I've kind of refined my tape formula, doing it unofficially for 2 years and now on the record for another 2 years. So, we're on year 4 of evaluating prospects and kind of honing this formula. One thing that I have consistently missed on in the past is I have overvalued contested catch guys. And what I've found is that, guys translating to the next level, the ability to separate cannot be overestimated. And I think one of the things that, quite literally the thing that Rashad Bateman graded best for me, and I think what a lot of folks like about him is that contested catch ability. If you're watching the Rashad Bateman highlights, you're watching him make great contested catches. But what's the flip side of that? Why didn't he separate before the catch point? And if you don't separate before the catch point in college, it's going to be very difficult to do that in the NFL. So, contested catch, what Rashad Bateman scores best at is not a highly rated category for me, in my evaluation. The other thing that a lot of folks really like about him is his route running ability. And that is also not something that I haven't, it's certainly in my tape evaluation, of course, but it's not something that has as high of a weight to it. Not all my traits are weighted equally. And it's because at the NFL level, they're going to ask you to run the routes that you need to run for that team. Depending on what team that you're playing in, they're going to teach you the routes in what they want you to do. Now, being a great route runner, if you could run the whole tree, it makes you, more scheme versatile. You can fit on more teams, so it's helpful. But in terms of actual translation to the next level, it's lower in my grading scale. And all of that is before we realize that he's not 6'2", he's 6'0", he's not 210 pounds, he's 190 pounds. So now we're in love with a 6'0", 190-pound contested catch guy? I don't know. I could be wrong on any of these guys. I do not claim to have a 100% hit rate, but I just don't see it with Rashad Bateman. So, I have him on the big board right now. He is 17 overall. So in the mid-second round, I think he's worth taking a shot on. If he's there at 17, I'll take him. I guarantee I won't have him, right? Because he's not going to be there at 17 probably in any drafts. There's a lot of folks that want to take him as wide receiver 1 off the board, wide receiver 2 off the board. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's just too much risk. I don't see it. With my first round picks, I want to have high confidence that they're going to hit and produce for me. And I just do not see that with Rashad Bateman. So that's definitely a guy that I'm higher on than a lot of folks.
Well, I'm glad you brought him up.
Lower on. I guess I'm lower on than a lot of folks.
I'm glad you brought him up because that was a player that I wanted to ask you about, but I'm like, I'm just going to let Matt, do his thing, pick his guys. And as somebody that, I know one of my favorite players of all time is watching Dez Bryant play. I'm not sure Dez Bryant could get it done in today's NFL, even prime Dez Bryant. Like, yes, he could catch those touchdowns, but that's the exact question that I always think of after all these years listening to guys like you, like separation is important. And I knew that Dez couldn't separate at all. He, even in his best days, he wasn't the best separator. And that's something that NFL teams really value, that really leverage that in today's passing game. So Bateman's a guy that, again, just as a novice, just watching some highlights once in a while that are popping up on Twitter. Yeah, these guys making contested catches, but why? And after the pro day numbers came out, he's 6 foot. Like, oh, okay. So those types of things, even to me, were like, this doesn't seem like it's lining up. So I'm glad you brought him up. I'm glad you're bringing in the insight, and so we'll defend you on Twitter if you need, bro. But you keep holding strong to that, and we'll see how this one plays out.
Yeah, and I've learned from my L's. I loved Kelvin Harmon. Very similar when people talk about comps
RIP.
for Rashad Bateman. I see Kelvin Harmon, and I still have Kelvin Harmon on probably 6 to 8 rosters because I bought in. You know what I mean? Like Hakeem Butler. In a little bit of a different way, but if you can't separate, it's just not going to work. So I've taken my L's on this, and I like to learn from my mistakes. I think it's the only way that you can really refine your process.
I've got one last question for you, Matt. I'm curious, any position you want, who's been your biggest mover in your rankings over the past 4 or so months? Just we'll say over this off season, whether it's, because of a good pro day, a bad pro day, measurements that we weren't expecting. Who's someone that's either completely plummeted down your rankings or maybe someone that's just completely launched to the top?
Oh man, that's a good question. One guy who I think came out of nowhere, essentially nowhere. Okay, I'm going to cheat. There's 2 guys that came out of essentially nowhere that I would love to talk about. And they're actually right next to each other on the rookie big board right now. So they're 21 and 22. So we're talking about late second round picks. And the first one is Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan. He came from Western Michigan, so he came out of nowhere for me. I quite honestly had not watched the tape on him until February, I think. Which is fairly late in my process. He's 5'8", 190. He's super explosive. He actually played on the outside at Western Michigan. I just talked about route running ability. The one part of route running that I think is essential and does translate very well is release off the line of scrimmage. And Dwayne Eskridge has a tremendous release off the line of scrimmage. He breaks a hard slant. I talk about it all the time. My favorite route for a wide receiver to run is a slant route because it sounds so simple. But if you can win slant routes, you're going to be very difficult to cover in the NFL. And I mentioned he's 5'8". He was physical and dominating along the boundary. Now he's playing at Western Michigan, so that's MAC, and he's going to have to play on the inside at the next level. But he is really, really explosive in a straight line. He had, I forgot his exact yards after catch, but I believe he was over 20 yards per reception in the last 2 out of the last 3 seasons. I believe he averaged over 20 yards per reception. So a huge, touchdown upside type guy for fantasy football purposes. I don't love comps, but for what he could bring to your fantasy football team, I've been kind of calling him like Will Fuller-esque, where it might be a little hit or miss, but I think he has that downfield explosive playability. And, I'm pretty convinced from his Senior Bowl performance and just what I'm hearing from the NFL side that he will be a day 2 selection. So I think he's going to be a top 100 pick. That is not, he's not a name that everybody knows. So I think he is somebody who is going to jump up boards after the draft, because people are going to be like, Dwayne Eskridge, who the heck is Dwayne Eskridge? And why did he go round 2 or why did he go early round 3? So, that's somebody that has definitely moved up my board. And the other guy that I don't think is moving up folks' boards quick enough here is Demetric Felton out of UCLA. I really like Demetric Felton. He's actually my running back 5 right now. And yeah, I mean, that's the key though. So Demetric Felton, he played running back in 2020 for UCLA. And, I believe UCLA played 4 games. All of the Pac-12 played like between 3 and 5 games because they were the last ones to get going this year. And Demetric Felton, he played running back this year, and he played partially running back the year before. If you remember, Joshua Kelly was the running back at UCLA in 2019. And I thought Demetric Felton looked really good running between the tackles. I love his athleticism. I love his elusiveness. I think he creates space really well on his own. I think he's got good vision. But the year before, now I just mentioned he played a little bit of running back in 2019. He was actually playing wideout for UCLA, and he was playing really good at the wideout position as well. Not the most technically sound wideout, but definitely, able to play along the boundary, able to separate with his speed, good hands, really nice hands. And so he's played both running back and wide receiver at the college level. He goes to the Senior Bowl. He's listed as a running back at the Senior Bowl, but all the highlights of him from the Senior Bowl is actually when he was running the one-on-one wide receiver DB drills, and he was breaking these defensive backs. And I just told you, he's not even a wide receiver. He's a running back. So he's one of these guys where we're not actually going to know what he is going to be for an NFL team until we hear his name called, because he could be classified as either a running back or a wide receiver in the NFL. And if the key here is if he's declared as a running back, then he's really exciting for me, because a running back that can catch the ball is a lot more exciting than a wide receiver that can run the ball, right? So I'm really, especially in this year's, weak running back class relative to wide receiver class. So Demetric Felton, if he goes in day 2, which I think he will, and if he goes as a running back, then he's going to be somebody who I'm not letting get out of the second round of any rookie drafts, because I think he'll possess some really nice upside to his game.
I love it. Bringing some deep names here. So those are the back end of round 2. Real quick, we'll get you out on this, Matt. So 2 very quick questions. Where would you draft Kyle Pitts in tight end premium super flex? And who's your tight end 2 for those types of leagues that people should be targeting for a better value, probably in round 2, maybe 3?
Yeah. So, Kyle Pitts on a super flex non-tight end board is 9. And I think in a tight end premium league, I'm willing to go up as far as 7, but not much further. So it's not as high as a lot of folks. And, one of the things that I have done right now is I've actually, this sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but I've gone in and I've done projections for, probably the top 40 rookies for their 2021 impact right now for, because I have full projections on my Patreon for every NFL player right now. And so I've tried to look at historical production and match up rookie profiles, just kind of, how they play the game and how that's worked over the last couple of years. And I have, given Pitts a really nice projection. I quite literally have given him the best projection by a long shot of any tight end over the last 3 years. The highest scoring rookie tight end over the last 3 years was Chris Herndon with 113 fantasy PPR points. All right, it's bad. So I've put Kyle Pitts well above Chris Herndon, and he comes in at tight end 12. Now, that's not tight end premium, but he comes in at tight end 12 in his rookie season. Like any tight end, I don't care how good Kyle Pitts is. You're going to have to be patient with him 2 to 3 years. So, I'm fine with that at 7. Or, if you want to take him at 5, I've tried to talk a lot of folks out of that, even in tight end premium. But if you want to take that, that's fine. Just understand that you're making an investment. Don't let me swoop in with a trade offer next year when you're annoyed that he hasn't produced as a top 3 tight end yet and that he's not Travis Kelce in his first season. Or Darren Waller, which I think everybody wants him to just be Darren Waller in his rookie season. Maybe he is, but that would quite literally break any past example of what we have. And outliers happen, but, I try not to bet on them. Looking down the board, this is really tough for me. Pat Freiermuth right now, so my rookie big board scores on a scale of 1 to 10. Pat Freiermuth is a 6'6". Brevin Jordan is a 6'5". I personally like watching players. I like Brevin Jordan a lot more. I think he's a great athlete. I think he's a great pass catcher. He did not test well at his pro day. And because he didn't test well at his pro day, I think he ends up sliding to potentially round 3. We talked about, the whole draft capital conversation. And I think Pat Freiermuth, who is more of a well-rounded tight end, he's a really good blocker as well as a pass catcher. I think he could end up going high day 2 because of an NFL team. If you look at like the Cincinnati Bengals, the Carolina Panthers, there's a lot of teams up there at the top of the second round that could really benefit from a two-way tight end. And so I think Freiermuth ends up going probably a full round earlier than Brevin Jordan, which is kind of giving him that bump for me. So technically right now, Freiermuth is my tight end 2. Very slightly. It hurts me because I love Brevin Jordan, and I do think he is the second best tight end in this class, but I can't ignore what the NFL is telling me either.
Yeah, and I wanted to see if you were sticking with Brevin Jordan, because I think that might have been the first video that you and John did way back, months ago. And I remember listening to that. I was like, man, they're hyping this guy up. And I think John even mentioned, like, I love round 2 Brevin Jordan versus having to take Pitts where you have to take him. But again, you guys need to be checking out all of Matt's work. Matt, I love what you're doing too. Like, you've been adapting, changing things. You're not just here for another 10 days and you disappear. You're doing this thing year round. So as we part ways here, why don't you just give the people one more plug where they can find your stuff? And I highly encourage you guys to check this stuff out. So Matt, why don't you hit them with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the big thing right now is the rookie big board, which I've been, everything I've talked about is on the rookie big board for you to see, player fantasy football projection, the tiers they have. I have updated ADP for all these guys, the NFL draft projection range, their tape grade, and then what I call the opportunity index, or all of that draft capital, first year projection things going on there. All that's available. Patreon.com/the FF Educator. I call it a year-round rookie guide because I'll update it with projections right after the draft. I'll track these guys through the summer. I'll track them through the fall, help you figure out the trade evaluation of them, well into the season here, and go back and reevaluate these guys once we see them, in context on their NFL rosters. It's just $3 a month. Patreon.com/the FF Educator. And you also with that get my top 200 Devy players, my top 200 Dynasty players, and my cornerstone top 75 rankings. And then, there's a few other tiers where you can get full projections for me, including the rookies, post-draft and pre-draft. I just imagine I got 40 guys pre-draft with projections, which I know is a little ridiculous, but I love the rookie game. I have the Rookie Big Board podcast as well. So that's a podcast as well as a YouTube channel. YouTube, we just broke 1K subscribers. So that was a really cool accomplishment. So yeah, we're rolling, man, but it's a 365 grind for me. I'm going to take about probably 3 weeks off after the draft, hone in my process. There's some really cool things I'm excited to add for the 2022 board. And then we're watching 2022 tape, man, and we're getting ready for next year.
There you go, man. I love it. Well-deserved few weeks off. I guess we'll let you have it. But follow Matt on Twitter at the FF_educator. Definitely check out all of his work. And again, I mentioned it earlier, I cannot stress this enough. His approach of looking at this from a dynasty perspective really helps you guys out. There's a big difference between looking at these and evaluating these prospects from an NFL perspective versus looking at them from that perspective, but mixing in the fact that we're looking at these guys from a dynasty. That's where we're trying to make our money. So really do appreciate it, Matt. Thanks again for coming on. Jake, you can follow Jake on Twitter at Jake Takes FF. You can follow myself on Twitter at Kyle Month8. Appreciate you tuning into the podcast. We'll catch you guys next week for a little bit of pre-draft good and bad landing spots. So be sure to tune back in next week. We'll catch you guys then.